All right. Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Look at this full room. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. My name is Elaine Almquist. I'm one of the part of the leadership team for Ranked Choice Boston, and I'm really excited that you all decided to show up with us tonight to learn more about why the climate movement should support ranked choice voting. We have a really exciting program for you this evening, and that includes finding out more about ranked choice Boston and ranked choice voting in general. We're going to hear from the incredible Bill McKibben, and then we're going to have a wonderful panel with climate activists from Boston, where we're going to ask some questions and really dive into the nuances of what is great about ranked choice voting for climate in particular. So we're going to start quickly just with a little explainer. I know some of you have seen before, and I want to welcome you back. Thank you for coming back. I want to give you a little explainer of what is ranked choice voting in case you are not familiar with it. So let's get into that really quickly first. So instead of being restricted to picking just one candidate, ranked choice voting gives you the power to rank candidates in the order that you like them. So instead of the graphic on the left where you just pick the one candidate that you like the best and the person with the most votes wins the election, ranked choice gives you the opportunity to rank the candidates in order of which ones you like. So rank your favorite number one, your second number two, etc. With ranked choice voting, your top choice is never harmed by ranking additional backup choices. In the current pick one system, when there are more than two candidates running, if you're not sure your favorite has enough money or name recognition to win, you might feel pressure as a voter to abandon the candidate you really love for a front runner who has that you like less, to avoid throwing your vote away. With ranked choice voting, your vote is never wasted. If your favorite candidate lacks the support to win, your ballot automatically counts for your next choice. At last, you can vote with your heart and your head at the same time. Ranked choice voting allows us to have high quality elections with more than two candidates competing. In Boston, that means ranked choice voting can allow us to have more than two candidates in the general election and still accurately determine who has the broadest support. One of the exciting things I want to share with you all is that for over a year now, we have had a wonderful coalition, which is now over 45 organizations, community organizations, working on bringing ranked choice to elections in the city of Boston. So we have an organization, Ranked Choice Boston. You might be reading my shirt right now. Ranked Choice Boston is a space for residents seeking more equitable and democratic outcomes to come together in community and coalition. We are building on Boston's overwhelming support for ranked choice voting. We had a ballot question a few years ago. 62% of Boston voters voted, and that is why we brought this back as a city measure. So we're building on that overwhelming support for ranked choice voting by continuing to educate and organize support for the use of RCV in our city elections. So I want to welcome you all again to this space. And I want to introduce our keynote speaker, which I'm very excited to be in the presence of. So Bill McKibben is a climate activist and author. McKibben helped found 350.org, the first global grassroots climate campaign, which has organized protests on every continent, including Antarctica, for climate action. He played a leading role in launching the opposition to big oil pipeline projects like Keystone XL and the fossil fuel divestment campaign, which has become the biggest anti-corporate campaign in history, with endowments worth more than $40 trillion stepping back from oil, gas, and coal. He stepped down as a board chair of 350 in 2015 and left the board and stepped down from his, accepting emeritus status. McKibben is also the founder of Third Act, which is organizing people over the age of 60 for action on climate injustice. So welcome to Bill, and please take the microphone and share your wisdom with us.
Well, Elaine, thank you so much, and what a pleasure to be here. I'm the ringer here, obviously, because I don't live in the Bay State. I'm one state away in the Green Mountains of Vermont, where we've got a beautiful foot of snow that's fallen so far today, and it's still coming down, um, and where we're busy preparing for that most important event, the eclipse, next week. It's got us pretty much in a lather up here. But what a pleasure to get to join in. And I'll talk for a few minutes, and then the real Boston pros, Cabell and Hessan, and my old friend Reverend Walker will take over. And I just want to say a few things. One, about ranked choice voting in particular. I actually have more experience with this than a lot of people because when I was a young reporter, I covered the city of Cambridge through 2 election cycles. And in those days, Cambridge was the only city in the country that was using what we called proportional representation in those days, but essentially was ranked choice voting. And it was remarkable to watch for a couple of reasons. Not only the reason that people usually cite, and then I'll get back to in a moment, that it allows people to raise important questions and the lack of spoilers and so on and so forth, but also because it promotes a certain kind of cooperation among people engaged in politics. It's very hard to be the kind of just absurd, cutthroat, I hate everybody who isn't me politician that we've come to specialize in recent years in this country, for the simple reason that you need people's, number 2 votes. So you can't just politically, you quickly figure out you can't be a jerk. And since being a jerk is, too often a major political move anymore in our country, and one of the things that gets us in deep trouble, I think that's alone a good reason to be thinking about this. But I've spent my life post, young political reporter as working on this issue of climate change. I wrote the first book about it 35 years ago this year, and I've organized some of the first big people's movements around it. And here's the thing. At this point, we've done the work that we need to do to convince most Americans that the time has come to take really deep action on this. We've got 70% of Americans who are in basic agreement that there's a serious problem here that we need to do something about. And why wouldn't people agree? At this point, there have been enough floods and fires and whatever else that you pretty much have to be holding a hand over your eyes in order not to get engaged here. But our political system doesn't make it easy for that to translate into action the way that it should. It's hard for truly important ideas to ever break through the kind of weird and dysfunctional gridlock that now has come to monopolize our political system, especially at the federal level, but really at many levels. And so it's in an effort to restore basic good health to our political system in a way that would quickly redound to action on the biggest issues that we face. It's time to have some basic reforms like this one that, I don't know quite what the right technical word, goose our political system in a way that allows fresh ideas, new faces, important ideas into this sphere. Now, I say this, I mean, it's not that I don't think Boston itself is in a good political place. I think that I got to say, for my money, Mayor Wu is the most inspiring mayor I know, and is doing remarkable things. And she is a smart, kind human being, which is also too rare in our political life. But this is a way to help make sure that Boston stays a healthy political environment and that example spreads far and wide, which it needs to do. Because when we get to things like climate change, there's no way for any place to solve this on their own. Every place needs to be taking action, but every place also has to be hoping that other parts of the country and the world take the steps that we need. So we need to start figuring out how to loosen up our really over tightened and ineffective political system in ways that really allow the things that people now desperately want to have happen to start happening. And I really do think that this is one of the easiest, most straightforward, most basic political reforms that allows that to happen. When I've watched it in operation in Cambridge, in Maine, here in my state of Vermont, where we've had ranked choice voting in Burlington and where we've had it in other places, for my money, it works. It works a treat in every place I've ever seen it. So if you're disgruntled with our political outcomes, and I am disgruntled with our political outcomes because what do you know? The North Pole's melting, the South Pole is melting, and the oceans are rising. So that's not a good sign that our system's working very well. If you're disgruntled with that, then one of the things that we need to do, of course, is work the existing political system as hard as we can. And here at Third Act, we're doing that. We've got 80,000 volunteers deeply engaged in this year's elections under this year's rules, and we'll do all we can. But the other thing you have to do is stick a screwdriver into the system too and start figuring out how to make it change so it isn't as brutally hard work as it is to reflect the will of people and get done what needs doing. So I'm going to stop there and just say many thanks for mounting this effort, and many thanks for letting me say my few words on behalf of it.
Thank you so much, Bill. We're so pleased that you took this time to be with us this afternoon, and we really appreciate you being present with us and sharing your experience, seeing how ranked choice voting is supportive of the climate movement in the places where we do have it. So we appreciate you. All right, the next section of our program here is going to be very exciting because you're going to hear from some of our active climate champions here in the Boston area. So let me introduce now our three panelists who will be taking some of our questions. Just for clarity, I'm sorry, we have prepared questions here that we already are going to be bringing up today, but I want you all to know that you will have the opportunity to ask questions of our movement. And I'm going to share a slide at the end here to make sure that you have that outlet to ask additional questions to find out more information. So let me, without further ado, introduce our incredible panelists. So first of all, Cabell Eames is the advocacy director for the Charles River Watershed Association. Cabell collaborates with leaders at the local, state, and federal levels to enact resilient policy initiatives throughout the Commonwealth. She hails from Richmond, Virginia, and has been at the forefront of climate activism since 1994, when she first organized for environmental issues with the Sierra Club's Save the Rainforest campaign. Upon settling in Massachusetts in 2005, Cabell intensified her commitment to political causes. Most notably, she served as the campaign manager for Bill Massey's gubernatorial election in 2018. Her unwavering dedication culminated in her role as the political director for 350's Better Future project, where she was pivotal in driving forward two of the most impactful climate change laws in the Northeast. And that is an indelible victory in the fight against climate change. So welcome, Cabell, to our panel. Next, we have Hessan Farooqi, who is the executive director at the Boston Climate Action Network, or BCAN. He is the first person of color appointed to lead BCAN in its more than 2-decade history. Hessan studied economics at Boston University, has worked in the United States Senate, and served on various federal, state, and local political campaigns. He also serves as an environmental justice advisor to the Metropolitan Area Planning Council on the development of their Greater Boston Climate Action Plan, and supports Mass Robotics on their Climate Robotics Working Group. He previously served as an advisor to the White House and Department of Energy's Opportunity Project. So thank you for being with us and welcome, Hessan. And finally, we have the Reverend Vernon K. Walker, who is the Climate Justice Program Director at Clean Water Action. Prior to this, he held the position of Senior Program Director for Communities Responding to Extreme Weather, or CREW. With a background in political advocacy, Vernon has served as a senior political campaign consultant for Voter Choice Massachusetts, which is our statewide organization working on ranked choice voting. And additionally, he's contributed as an executive committee member for the Sierra Club. In 2023, Vernon ran for city council in Cambridge, which is the only ranked choice voting system in Massachusetts currently. Not for long, we hope. So welcome, Reverend Walker. And I'm so excited to introduce all of you. And I want to give you all just a moment. Let's go around in a circle and take a minute to I want to hear from you. What do you think your proudest accomplishment is when you think about the contributions that you've made to our climate activism in the Boston area? And I'm going to go to Vernon first.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hippopotamus glad and elephant happy to be here with you all. Certainly, you're anywhere in the world and you decided to spend some time with us to really unpack how the climate changes and ranked choice voting is complementary. So to answer Elaine's question, what really protrudes out to me is working in underserved communities such as Dorchester, Mattapan, the South End, and helping people understand their risks to extreme heat. Those three communities that I mentioned, and also I don't want to fail to mention Brockton. Those three communities and city and one city, Brockton, suffer from the urban heat island, or a lot of Brockton does. So we focused on the communities that suffer from the urban heat island effect, which in essence is communities that are extremely hotter and much hotter than communities that have green space, trees, and things of that nature. So I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to educate folks on the ground about how to avoid heat strokes and heat exhaustion. We partnered with physicians from Mass General Hospital to conduct these workshops. And not only that, we also partnered with MGH to provide energy efficient air conditioner to folks that otherwise could not afford air conditioners, and also cooling kits that were mobile, that have things like electrolyte tablets, water, cohesive wrap, thermometers, etc. So people that are suffering from heat exhaustion can begin to treat that before it turns into heat stroke, which we know by the numbers across the country that heat stroke kills more people than floods and hurricanes and rip currents, etc., as it is the most deadly form of extreme weather. And we also saw that in Chicago in 1995, where 739 people died because of a 5-day heat wave. So I'll put a pin right there. That is one of my most proudest. I have many, many more, but that's one of them that I'm really glad we were able to connect with folks that live in environmental justice communities and really help unpack and make climate change real and meet them where they are.
Thank you. Okay, Hessan, next to you. Same question.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. I think one thing I'm very proud of that we've done in the last year that I've been here at BCAN is worked with community-based organizations in all of Boston's environmental justice neighborhoods to connect the residents there, both renters and landlords, with programs that can save the environment, yes, and also save them money. Programs like Mass Save and Community Choice Electricity. And we've built lasting relationships, and we've been able to get so many of those residents in the fight to make those programs even better. And more broadly, I think that is the thing I think about all the time is just how wonderful of a movement we've been able to build within BCAN, of people from every generation. And personally, I'm very proud of the fact that we have, in the last year plus that I've been here, been able to bring so many young people who look like all of the different people in all of our neighborhoods into our movement, into our organization, and show an entire generation of people that they have a home in this. And so all of us together, using the wisdom and experience of our seniors and the energy of our young people, can turn our collective fears into collective action and make a difference right here in our own city.
Thank you so much for that answer. That I just love that last part. That really stuck out to me so much, turning collective fear into collective action. All right, Cabell, same question for you.
Yeah, so I would say for me, it would have to be the turning point of seeing so many people wanting to run for office on climate. That's a real sea change, that because I've been a climate activist for 30 years, so I've been laughed out of a lot of rooms by elected officials. And having someone run on the Green New Deal was huge. We were nervous for Mayor Wu, to be honest. But she prevailed, and she prevailed strongly, and the entire community came out for her, and we were able to convince longtime legislators, people that have been in office for as long as I've been a climate activist, that climate was the issue that they needed to tackle. And we were able to do that with two very robust, I would say, climate laws in Massachusetts that I'm very proud of having a part of. So we couldn't have done that without people like Michelle Wu, without people like Julia Mejia and others running for office and speaking to climate and the issues that face their constituents.
Thank you. I'm so excited to hear all of your answers, especially, and I didn't mention this about myself very much. Hi, I've been working in the electoral space for 22 years, and the very first things I did in that space was I worked in the Massachusetts State Senate working to push an environmental justice bill that ended up passing, and it deeply impacted Superfund sites that were in the community that I lived in. We were able to clean them up and put in new housing for a community of color. So this is also an issue that I hold near and dear to my heart. And I'm so excited to be here in community with all of you, listening to the contributions that you've made to, this climate emergency that we're all living in together. Okay, I have some other questions that are aimed a little bit at individually, some of you. So Vernon, you're the one here that has been the candidate who's actually run in a ranked choice system. We only currently have ranked choice voting in the city of Cambridge in Massachusetts, despite the fact that many other communities have passed local ordinances. They're sitting at the State House right now. We have home rule petitions. So hopefully Cambridge will not be the only community for very long. But as an experienced climate activist and a person who's been a candidate, can you share with us what your experience was as a candidate in a ranked choice system, and how that might be different as a climate activist from running in a first past the post system?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. In general, the toxicity in politics is much lowered. The vitriol in politics is much lowered. So I wasn't really focused on attacking other candidates, because as me and my folks I work with, as we were knocking on doors, and if someone was really sold to the idea of voting at their number one choice as number one, then I would oftentimes lobby for number two. And a lot of times people voted, in a lot of instances, people were voting for the people that they knew or had known for a long time through a neighborhood association or through some other efforts. So I noticed that one of the things was that the toxicity level was lower as compared to first past the post, where I've seen other candidates engage in races and it becomes very vitriolic and it becomes very nasty and mean and ugly. One of the other things is that I was able to work in the slates with candidates, with other candidates. So that's not possible in a first past the post. So candidates that I was similarly aligned with ideologically, around climate or around housing, etc. We were able to support each other and knocking at the doors and encourage our number ones to vote for them as a number two, number three, number four. There's three other candidates that I'm thinking about that we had a very similarly aligned platform. And the other thing is with the running in a ranked choice voting system, it encourages minority and people of color to run. And that's one of the things that we were talking about back in 2020 when we were on that effort to try to help ranked choice voting pass across the state, is that essentially we need our elected officials to look more diverse and represent the interests of the larger constituency and not just the slight few. And oftentimes that's the issue that we see in politics, where folks are getting elected in first past the post system that represent the interests of the few and not the interests of the many. And also, I think one of the downsides of first past the post is that you are able to discount people who are not a part of your base, as opposed to, in my experience, running in a ranked choice voting system, I was able to work collaboratively and also keep the messages positive, because even if I'm trying to appeal to, even if someone has a number one or number two, I'm trying to appeal to that person to try to be in their top three or four. So I think that's essentially what we need, is systems that ensure we take toxicity out and put positivity in, and also being able to draw contrasts with other candidates in a respectful and meaningful way, where it's not disparaging, but rather it uplifts the values of us all. So those are some of the experiences that I had running for the first time in a Cambridge and running in Cambridge, and it certainly was an interesting experience. And yeah, I'll put a pin there unless there's some other follow-up question. Oh, sorry, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. I think you really, covered some of the differences that the system change itself creates, right? And that wasn't necessarily about you individually as a candidate, but the system creates a different climate for people to run in, pun intended. Okay, I'm gonna give our next question here to Hessan. So, 2 candidates, 1 vote means that candidates spend almost the entire time on their campaign talking about everything that separates them, and very little time talking about issues in the community that have broad support, like climate change. So as a voter and an activist and a person who's worked on campaigns, can you share with us your experiences listening to the rhetoric of those campaigns, and how much time have you heard spent on climate on first past the post campaigns in comparison to how widely accepted climate change is in our community?
Yeah, that's an easy one. Obviously not enough. Like, we can't talk about climate change enough, because this is the issue. This is the issue that touches every other issue. And, when you look at the fact that, for example, people breathe in harmful pollutants from gas stoves, and then that makes their health and their kids' health worse off. Climate change is a health issue. When we look at the fact that getting people out of cars onto trains and bikes is not just better for the climate, but it's also better for people's health. It's better for the economy. It helps build more connected cities. Then climate is a transit issue. So I could go on and on. I think so often, especially on national campaigns, we silo these issues. We talk about them only in, first of all, only a few talking points, but not connecting them and really being real about people's day-to-day lives and how people are really experiencing these issues on the ground. And when so much of the discourse is just about, a team sport and dunking on the other people on the other team, whether that's your opponent or the other party, or a candidate that you're not even running against, but who you think is a good boogeyman for your campaign, then you're not talking about what people are actually going through. And that hurts all of us, because not only does it mean that we're not understanding the issues that other people might be experiencing, but it also means that voters aren't able to make an informed decision about what the person in front of them is actually going to do for them when they get to office. Because the fact of the matter is, the vast majority of the job of any elected official is not in this small group of very polarizing issues, but it's in a lot of day-to-day issues that really do touch our lives, really matter, but we almost never hear very much about on the campaign trail, because again, they just have to highlight this small area of difference between them and the other candidate. So I think not only would ranked choice voting result in better candidates and better elections and discourse, but it would also help people deepen their connection with government, because they'll be able to better understand what the heck these people are even doing. Because I'll be real, I go to vote sometimes on these ballots, and I, vote for people, and I have never heard of these people nor their office, and I could not tell you a single thing that this office does. And that is not just a fault of their campaign, it is a fault of the system that only means that they'll get press coverage or attention on social media if they say something polarizing, or they say something that is negative towards their opponent. So it's really about us talking more about the issues, being real about just what people are going through day to day, and making sure that people can then, as voters, make informed decisions about who the right person is for the job.
I think you covered so many good points there. I'm really I'm excited that we got to hear from you on that. I have a question for you now, Cabell. You have a really unique experience in the climate movement, in that you've been involved in 501c4 nonprofits. You've been involved in 501c3 nonprofits. And if you don't know the difference between those two, one can do some political work and one does a lot more political work. And also PACs. I'm really interested to know, as a person who's filled leadership roles in organizations with those different structures, how would ranked choice voting as a system be beneficial for interacting with candidates, when these organizations often have both a lobbying arm where they're trying to pass legislation with elected officials, but they're also doing endorsements for candidates? So I'd love to hear your experience in particular on that issue.
Sure. Well, I think first what I want to say is that I don't particularly enjoy working with a climate organization that doesn't have a C4 arm. And the reason for that is because I want to know the candidates intimately, and I want to be able to partner with them and educate them on issues, because climate is not intuitive. It is not an issue that is easy to understand the solutions. It's not easy to implement solutions. We talk a lot about, it's hot, heat islands, green infrastructure, adaptation, mitigation. Most people don't know what those terms mean. And so I find it to be really important to be able to have a C4 that can work with candidates to educate them, and have a safe space for them to ask questions. But to also, once they get into office, to be able to be a continued partner, as well as holding them accountable to the promises that they made when you had an endorsement interview with them. So, and you also get to know, when you have that endorsement interview, what they don't know. And that's really important, because when you're partnering with them once they've been elected, and they don't know about solar and PVs, and they don't know about geothermal, and how you have to have groundswell to be able to even have a geothermal system. They don't know those things, and to be that safe, to continue that safe space for them is really important, to get action, period, and to get implementation. It's one thing to pass a law. It's a totally different animal to implement it. And we're in the implementation stage here in Massachusetts, and it's going slow. So it just goes to show you, we've passed some really great legislation. We've elected some really great people that we know are smart, people that we know care. But this is where it gets really hard. And this is where you got to put the screws to people to do the work. It's really important. And to that end, I would say that having that type of system, should you endorse someone that you become friendly with, but then they backpedal on their promises and there's another candidate, you can endorse them both. And it kind of keeps you in that neutral space so that once they do, whoever wins, right? Let's say the incumbent wins, which is, usually happens in Massachusetts. Then you haven't iced that relationship. You've been able to kind of keep it, beneficial. I think that's really important. It also allows, I really want climate activists to run for office. And so if you have people in the fold doing the work with you, it's easier to try to get them to run for office because they believe that they have a chance. I mean, we're America is like really hung up on the fact that like it has choice and freedom, but for some reason we don't have it when we vote. I think that a lot of people are upset with that idea. And the only resistance that I've ever found with ranked choice voting was confusion. That's it. And I think that that's really important to know, because once you educate people, they obviously want choices, and choices are the better way to go when it comes to multiple issues, but particularly on climate.
I'm so glad that you talked about that part about wanting choice, because the slogan of our movement has been more choice, more voice, right? When you have choices, when you have better choices, when you have more choices, you have a better opportunity to use your voting as a choice of who can service our shared ideals better. So that's incredible. Okay, I have a couple more questions. I'm going to open these up to anybody who wants to say something about them on our panel. So, strategic voting. How many times have you gone in a first past the post system to vote, and you have more than one candidate, and maybe there's an additional party person, a presidential election where you have a Green Party candidate, or another election where you have somebody super viable who's okay, and you have somebody who's not super viable and who is excellent on one issue? Let's talk about strategic voting and how that works under our current system and how it's better under RCB. Anybody who wants to pop up and chat about this, especially if you've had an experience doing it yourself. Just come off mute.
Okay, well, I'll out myself as having an experience here. I was part of Ralph Nader's campaign. For those of you that remember, he was very anti-corporate, and I just loved that about him. And it didn't turn out so well. So that's the kind of thing that I think about. If I would have had more choice, if we would have had more choice as a country, we might have been able to end up with a better candidate. And we probably would absolutely not be in this position because of, Al Gore would more than likely have had the vote because, I think he won anyway, but that's it for a different time. But I just think that, the third party situation, is because that's people screaming that they want choice. That's what that is. And so if we gave it to them through ranked choice voting, then that would just make the democracy soil just so much more healthier for more candidates, for more ideas, for more robust turnouts. It just makes all the difference. And you don't think that it does, but it really matters because we see it in Maine and we see it in Cambridge. And but sometimes I'm scared to say that in environmental spaces that I had a hand in the Nader Gore situation, but I do think about it every time I vote.
When we were talking about this conversation previously, something that I often share is that a voter should never feel embarrassed or ashamed to have voted for the person they think is the best suited for the job, right? And our current system really sets people up to feel that way because of the structure. So thank you for sharing that experience. Hassan, I think you were going to say something too, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
I think a
Vernon, we'll
lot,
get to you too. I don't want to miss out.
um, yeah, everyone can really relate to this. I think a lot about the 2020 presidential primary election. I was knocking on doors in New Hampshire, for Senator Warren's campaign, and you had so many candidates, as I'm sure many of us remember, running in that race. You had like multiple debate stages because they couldn't all fit them all on one stage, and so a lot of choice and a lot of great folks who ran. I had, in the last couple weeks before those primaries, so many folks would say, they would tell me about whatever it was that they cared about, and we would talk about the issues, and we had really great substantive conversations. And then I would tell them about, some of the different policies and ideas. And so many of them came back to the same point, because electability was the big issue of that election. President Trump was in office. Folks were saying, yeah, we just can't have him anymore. Whomever it is that can beat him is the person that we want, even if we have some disagreements. And so after we'd have these great conversations at the doors, they would say, yeah, I really like Senator Warren. I would vote for her, but I just don't know if she can win. Fact is, that was the answer I got more so than any other reason for the folks who weren't supporting her. It wasn't because they had some big issue or they had some major disagreement on the policy. They were making a political calculation, not because of who they thought was the best person for the job, but because who they thought some other person somewhere else in the country, who maybe they've never even met, who maybe doesn't even exist, may not want to vote for. And so we end up with different candidates because everyone's trying to play this game as if they're Steve Kornacki on MSNBC of who's going to be the most electable. And we end up not having a real discussion about the big issues that actually affect people's lives. So, the fact is that happens in so many elections. And 2020 was unique because there were so many candidates, but there are races all the time, especially at the local and state level, where you have folks who are especially newer candidates, maybe don't have the same name recognition, and people meet them and they say, yeah, you're great, but I just don't know if you can win, and I'm not going to vote for you for that reason. Which is, of course, ridiculous, because if all of us vote for the person that we want to win, then that person would win. So this is why ranked choice matters. If we had ranked choice in that primary, I think we may have had a different result in 2020. But even if we didn't have the same result, we would have certainly had a candidate who had the broadest base of support across the entire party, across every state. And that's what matters, is that we have consensus in the people that we are electing for these positions, because everyone that we elect for every job, from city councilor to president, is someone who represents all of the people, even if only a small portion of them voted for that person. So we need to make sure that they really do feel connected with and accountable to all of the people, so we can have governance that really does reflect everyone's needs.
Absolutely, 100%. Okay, Vernon, you had something to pitch in here too.
Yes. Yeah. So I think essentially what we're talking about is eliminating the spoiler effect. And with this first past the post, one of the clear deficiencies is that you have this spoiler effect. We think of local elections such as the Fall River situation, or even what Cabell was mentioning about Ralph Nader in 2000. And the spoiler effect is real, and it's I think what we need to do in our system is move past the worst of two evils to flip that and say, well, let's have this system, ranked choice voting, so that we can no longer have that line of thinking the worst of two evils. But we can actually pick who we want, as Hessan was mentioning and Cabell was mentioning, and Elaine alluded to, around voting for the person who you resonate with ideologically, but you may not think who would win because of the lack of resources or lack of people power, etc. But with ranked choice voting, you can put that person as your number one, and then subsequent choices. So simply put, I think there's a Claritin call from the ranked choice voting movement across the country. And in fact, I knocked on doors in Ann Arbor back in 2021. Ann Arbor, Michigan passed about a couple weeks before the city council passed ranked choice voting in Ann Arbor. I so happened to be out in Michigan and was able to knock on some doors, and it was really a good time with a lot of the organizers and folks out in Michigan that was pushing for that. So there's a movement, there's a clarion call across the country where people are rising up and saying that enough is enough. We're not going to sit idly by while this political system that we currently have is divisive and is encouraging meanness and nastiness and toxicity. We're not just going to sit idly by, because that's not the best of what we can be as Americans. So I'm glad that that Boston, Ranked Choice Boston, is a part of this growing national movement to say enough is enough, and we are not going to sit idly by while we have a system that tears us apart and not a system that unites and unifies.
I'm so glad you brought up that ranked choice has passed and is being used in other places like Ann Arbor. We have it in New York City, in Alaska, and Maine, and some other places throughout the country. We actually had some really great victories for ranked choice voting across the country this year. We also had some places that implemented it and then people tried to roll it back. And one of the most interesting facts that I learned through watching those places were that once voters got to use ranked choice voting and practiced using it, when they had recalls, when they had ordinances to ask them to take it away, it became so much more popular when it went to the ballot the second time. Once voters had it, they were like, no, 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 we're not going back. We like this a lot. So I know that when Bostonians get to try this, because we are wicked smart, right? We are going to really figure out that this is the way to go and turn around and talk to all of our brother and sister cities across Massachusetts and get it passed there too. All right, we have enough time for one more question. And I'm going to, again, just any of the three of you that want to chat. So you all kind of alluded earlier to the quality of candidates that are in our races in Massachusetts and in Boston. Boston has had a tremendous amount of exciting candidates. We want to continue that healthy environment in our races for a long time. We are in Massachusetts number 50 in election competitiveness. We're used to being number 1, so that's, a disappointing statistic. So I want to ask all of you, what is it about ranked choice voting that you think, helps new people who wouldn't normally get into races, get out there, decide to run for office and put themselves out there, and especially the folks that in the climate movement? What are you hearing from people who are thinking about running for office from your networks about the system that we have? I know it's a big question.
Well, I think it comes down, for this campaign being focused on Boston. Yeah, we have some great folks in office, but this is bigger than any one mayor or any one city councilor. This is about how we build a system that really encourages a real productive discussion about all of our ideas in every election. By the way, I think this is probably clear. I think we should have ranked choice voting for every election at every level anyway. But as I always say about all of our work at BCAN, what we do at the local level really does touch people's lives in an intimate way. And it's a model for cities and towns and states all over the country. So this work will have resounding effects everywhere because people will see that it works. And one of the ways I think it works in candidate quality and getting more people who care about environmental justice to the table is, look, we know so often the reason that certain communities, low-income communities, Black and brown communities, don't get what they need from government is because we have this whole process of making your voice heard in government, running for office, yes, and all these other ways of voting and reaching out to elected officials and participating in advocacy organizations that just don't work for everyone because so often they require you to have time and the ability to engage really deeply for a bunch of time. And if you've got kids you got to take care of, or you're working multiple jobs, you're just not going to be able to participate in the same way. And so it's no surprise then that those exact same people who need the help the most have the least ability to participate in the advocacy process. And on the issue of environment, we see that. We see it here in Boston. We have communities like Roxbury and East Boston that are burdened with horrible air quality because of planes and buses. We have communities like Dorchester and East Boston and Charlestown that are consistently flooding from coastal sea level rise. But we also have flooding happening in all of our communities because of rainfall that's happening more intensely. And obviously, we've talked a lot about extreme heat as well. And that happens in large part because of a lack of tree canopy. And we know that the way that our trees look and the way that we have access to green space in different neighborhoods is the intentional result of redlining and racial segregation of our neighborhoods. It is issue after issue after issue that compounds on top of each other. The way that we're going to see these systems and structures change and level the playing field to make sure that the people who need the help the most can get it means that we've got to think about how people can actually participate in all of the ways that government works. Running for office is one of the biggest and most visible. So if we can create a system where people without a whole lot of money, without a whole lot of name recognition or established political connections can show up and get on the ballot, we're going to get folks who really are thinking about environmental justice. Maybe they come out of an organization like mine, but certainly if they're coming from these communities, they're seeing these issues firsthand. There's not a single person you can talk to in East Boston, be they an activist or not, who isn't at some level concerned about sea level rise and flooding. And so if we can get more folks in these communities to be on the ballot, and to feel comfortable doing so without being afraid of being a spoiler, without being afraid of being pummeled with negative advertising left, right, and center, and feeling like they can actually bring their ideas to the table, meaningfully contribute to the discourse, whether or not they win, then we're going to get a political system that looks more like the issues and the people who make up all of our neighborhoods, not just a small group of people who have always had access to political power and will continue to have access to political power if we don't change these underlying systems.
Could not have said that better. Cabell, Vernon, do you have anything else you want to add to that? We are getting close to our closing time, and I want to be aware of that because all of you who are watching and listening with us have dedicated an hour to us, and we're so grateful for your time and attention. Did you two want to add anything more to that or? No. Okay, great. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. Exactly. Thank you, Reverend. So what we're going to do now is just change gears. First of all, so much gratitude for all of you. If those of you who are watching, listening, if you want to use your reactions here to give some praise, claps, thank you so much to our panelists for taking the time to be with us and share your experiences and your expertise with us this evening. So we cannot let you go without asking you to join our movement and tell you how you can do so. So I'm going to put up a slide here and give it over to Cabell so she could tell you more about that.
Trying to see, okay, I can see, sorry. I was trying to hit my mute button. So we have lots of ways that you can help. First of all, signing the petition would be really, really monumental for the movement. And you need to talk to your members about this because we really need to spread the word about ranked choice voting. We need to spread the word about the support that it has. And you can do that by going to the website as well, because there's the petition that's there. Do we have a slide for that we can show?
I think Kate's dropped the link in the chat,
Okay,
or is
links in the
about
chat.
to, but it's just
Okay.
rankchoiceboston.org, and we have our join us button and our petition right up there in the menu. So that's where you can find that. And the
Awesome.
QR code goes right there if you want to snap that on your phone. Great. So we are looking for individuals, obviously, to reach out to your city councilors, to reach out to Mayor Wu, to let them know you want this to be the system that we're using for voting in the city of Boston. You're probably going to see some movement in the city council soon. We can't make any promises on timeline, but Our executive director, Ed, who's on here, has been doing an incredible job talking to our city council. Our organizers, many of you who are here in this room watching tonight, have been doing a great job lifting this issue up, making sure that our city council and mayor know that this is a top priority for Boston. So yep, shout out to Ed. Thank you so much. We want to make sure that you can get more information as well. We're really looking to build our coalition. Like I said, we have, Ed, if you can put in the chat how many we're up to, because we're growing so fast. I know we're over 45 members right now of our coalition. We are looking to add climate organizations to our coalition. So if you are we're at 43 organizations so far, community organizations in our Boston coalition. If you are on the board of a climate organization, be it a neighborhood organization, a Boston citywide, or a state one, we want you to join our coalition. So please, Ed's email is in the chat. It's Ed, ED at, it's ironic because he's the executive director and his name is Ed, so ED at rankchoiceboston.org. Please send him an email and he can help walk you through joining as a coalition partner. If you want to join as an individual, the petition is the best way to do that. We want to make sure also that you have an opportunity to learn more about Ranked Choice Boston. So our website has an incredible frequently asked questions section. You can get, I swear, almost every single question you could possibly have about this is answered on that page. But if you still have questions, reach out to Ed. You can also find us on the social media channels. We have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. So please follow us on those streams so that we can be in touch with all of you about moving forward. I just want to express some extra gratitude for all of you who are not on our panel and our speaking program, for you who spent an hour with us learning about this important movement. We are in a climate emergency. We need to use every pathway forward to make change on this issue. And we know that ranked choice voting is a big way for us to move forward. So I'm going to give a double thumbs up and get those fireworks going on my screen for all of you who spent time with us this evening. So thank you so much for being with us, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care.